Okay, thanks very much, Jill. I'm just going to wind up talking about my game is politics. I've spent most of my life working for politicians, don't hold that against me. And sometimes it's been fun, sometimes not. But I just talk about the policy and political implications of this whole thing we've been talking about. And while the Voice was certainly defeated, it wasn't the biggest loss we've had. There's been bigger losses to referenda in the past. I'll just put a couple up here. You may not remember the incomes power back in 1973. It only got 34% yes vote. Parliamentary terms only got 32% yes vote. Rights and freedoms only got 30% vote. These are all put up by the ALP. The Republic only got 45% yes, and the Voice only got 39%. So certainly pretty poor. And only 11 referenda have been lost in all states, and the Voice is one of them. So to me, it's still a pretty significant event we've had. And there's some very special features about the Voice referendum. And I got very annoyed, and I know if you did, about different corporations and bodies that endorse the Voice or sent emails around to their staff to say, do the right thing and do the Voice and so on. This because my point all the time, this was a political act. Okay, the Voice did not have, like some referendum in the past, like the 1967 one, bipartisan support. So corporations in Australia, certain other groups in Australia were engaging in politics, and politics should be kept out of the workplace in that situation. And also, I think Kevin's touched on, the actual formal committee that they had set up to give advice on the Voice and the wording, they didn't even follow it. It wasn't the correct wording anyway. But what really upset me was this corporation support around Australia that we saw. Airlines giving free tickets if you're in the yes camp, okay? And I know on the Monday afterwards, the place where my son worked, which I cannot mention, an email went around, those who are suffering can get time off, and so on and so forth. Now, a couple of staff at that organisation sent an email back to the great powers that be that, hey, we think this did a lot of harm to business, and by the way, we really don't think you should have been doing it. And of course I said to my son, maybe you should send, if you want to not keep your job for very long, maybe you should send an email saying, if you voted no and it lost, would you get time off as well? You know, right? That's the question I find interesting. I also thought that the celebrity endorsement was nauseatingly off. Why, I don't want a sportsman telling me how to vote. All right? Okay? I don't follow sport, so I don't really want someone who plays some game called rugby or something telling me how to vote. Or Johnny Farnham telling me how to vote, okay? Or someone who's drawing... Someone.
Speak up to Johnny Farnham. The poor guy was on his deathbed and he was broke. That's why they sold the race.
Well,
I don't think he really supported it.
He supported it. And all the culture vultures supported it. Also, the other thing which was very odd about this referendum was the personal tax. Now, the personal tax, that's why you never saw many no signs around the place, right? You had lots of yes signs. And the personal tax, which I've never seen, we have disagreements in our society, that's fine. I think that's a bad idea, that's a stupid idea, that we could do something better. But it became a personal tax, that you were somehow a second-rate person if you had said no, or you're being irrational. Now, the great saving grace of this was, of course, Jacinta Price, right? It's pretty hard to call Jacinta Price a racist. And if you saw her on the National Press Club, well, that was just didn't it? You know, 35-minute speech, answered every question, put the compare person in his place a couple of times, and fantastic. Then we had all the advertising going on. All these things are going to have some lessons for future election campaigning. All the advertisements, you know, there was hardly much on the no side. And then we had the emotional. I think Kevin is right. We actually didn't see those words of what were in the referendum proposal talked about unless you read your little booklet or something. If you should do the right thing by voting this particular way. Now, that's a legitimate point of view, I accept. But we sort of don't, when we go to election time, we don't say we better vote Labor or Liberal and do the right thing and feel sorry for people. And I think the other thing which marked the voice was the arrogance of the people who thought this was going to be a walk-in. Now, to be very frank, I think the Albanese government went ahead with the voice for a couple of political reasons. It wasn't about addressing things. One, it was to keep the Greens at bay, because the ALP is being nibbled by the Greens, right? Okay? So some seats that changed in Queensland, they went to the Greens, not to the ALP. The second thing, they were thought of being very smart. They got Mr. Dutton, the leader of the coalition, and this will divide the Liberal Party, right? All those progressives in the Liberal Party. So this was a political technique to wedge the Liberal Party and hope it will divide them. Now, for a whole range of reasons, that didn't happen. So, but I believe it was highly politically, don't think this did not have a political partisan agenda. It did have, so let's go forward. So what are some lessons, I think? Firstly, this is why I think it's important. Politically, it shows the Albanese government is not always on the winner, that it can make mistakes. There's something went really wrong inside the government that went ahead with this referenda and did it so badly. It really shows that the government that's had a pretty dream run is quite vulnerable. It can be beaten in a sense. That's a very important thing. Secondly, politically, it's important that the Liberal Party, spurned on a bit by the National Party, we have to accept, actually had the guts to take a stand, right? Because I have a view that you win elections not being like the other mob, but being different. Okay? That's how you win. You differentiate yourself from the other mob. You don't go along. The best thing a government wants, let me tell you, I've worked in government, the best thing a government wants is for the opposition to agree with you, right? It means you haven't got to work very hard. Right? Easy. The other thing that's brought out that we often use this term in politics, the silent majority, okay? The people who are not joiners, don't want to march in the streets, don't want to attack someone, but they're the silent majority. I think to show that there is such a thing as the silent majority, and they spoke, and we heard them. And the government has got to listen to the silent majority. So that's a couple of things. Electioneering, and I've been involved in lots of election campaigns, unfortunately. So one thing this shows, lots of advertising doesn't work. Now, I've always argued that it's basically a waste of time. And we saw, despite all the blanket advertising of the year, it didn't work. Okay, so parties, could they please stop wasting money on silly advertisements and maybe a bit more money on developing some decent policies for the rest of us, okay? The second thing, celebrity endorsement doesn't work, right? Or having celebrity candidates doesn't work too well. That didn't sway many voters. Somehow we all saw it. So political parties, please select people in the future that have some commitment to your cause and some willingness to fight the fight, and not just because they run around a football oval or something like that. The other little thing, or anyone who stood out and handed out how to vote cards on election day, this is a very Australian thing we do, by the way. Other countries don't do this, 10 hours out in the sun, great fun. Giving people how to vote cards, which they put in the rubbish bin as they walk in. It's all great. Now there's the different polling booths. I was involved in, my church was a polling booth. We made quite a bit of money from selling sausage sizzle things and so on. So that was good. But there were about 25 yes people handing out how to vote cards, and 3 poor, very tired no people handing out how to vote cards. And with there's all these techniques you get told about how to, no, wink when your people come in, get some friends, how you going, friend? Also, well, what that proved, it didn't make a difference. That is all a lot of political hogwash. Okay? It's just a lot of hogwash. Okay? Don Cameron, former members here, he might have a different view. So electioneering, I think we should pick up some lessons about campaigning and elections, from the whole campaign. And maybe political parties might maybe spend their money and their time a little bit differently. Constitutionally, Kevin hadn't quite mentioned this, it does mean Mr Menzies, our greatest Prime Minister, had one referendum in 1951, the anti-communist referendum, okay, which he lost. And I'm told from his daughter that he went home that night, punched the pillow, bugger the lot of them, he said, and went to sleep. Good sleep. And we never had another referendum under Menzies, right? That was it. As soon as he left, they had a referendum in 67. So the lesson was, Mr Menzies' lesson, he only won 7 elections, by the way, so what would he know? He realised that this was really not a good thing to do. Now, one result of all this is it's going to put a kibosh on too many people in government rushing ahead with another bright idea about having another referendum on the Republic, okay? Or something like that, right? So I think so that means they'll do other things, of course, if they won't have a referendum. But I think it's a really important thing. So the Republic Committee, based in Canberra, I'm sure they're working out what's the next step going to be. Now, I just want to look about some trends happening in our political area at the moment, okay? Firstly, there's an attempt to portray Australian society as racist. Now, I reject that completely. I'm not saying some people have not had a hard time at different times from different countries. Secondly, there's a hostility to the resources sector in Australia in the current climate policy. Mining is bad, okay? Even though coal's our biggest export, right? That's a problem. There's a bit of antipathy towards Christian religion, okay? I'm not saying everyone went to church in the past and we're all goody two-shoes, but it has become quite observable. There's been, as Kevin was saying, a transference of power from parliaments to courts. And we've got more courts now than we used to have. This is another worrying trend, okay? Next thing, there's people believe we should open the borders. Anyone should come in, okay, from any country, no matter what's going on and whether it's got any responsibility to do with us at all. That sort of scenario, and we can see the consequences of that. You know what worries me most about all the protests about Israel? So I can't get over how many Palestinian flags there are. It really wonders that. Okay, how many? Where do they all get them from? I don't know. And there's also suspicion of activities of law enforcement bodies. You know, police are always under the gun for doing something or not doing something. And the other thing I worry about a lot was signing up to international agreements. Now, Mr Whitlam, and I've done an excellent book on Mr Whitlam, which Anthony will sell you. I went to a conference years ago. Mr Whitlam was very big on signing up international agreements. Now, I couldn't quite ever get, as a student, all time since, if you really believe in Australian nationalism, and I'm in the Australian nationalist camp, if you like, you're proud to be Australian, like Sean was telling us before. Why do you want to give up your sovereignty to sign up to someone else to tell you what to do? Especially some of those people telling you what to do aren't particularly nice people. And so it really worries me that we rush too often into signing into international agreements. And these are some of the trends, I think, that come out, that we need to be fighting on these issues just as much as we fought on the voice, from my view. So what's going to be some future reactions, I think? Firstly, I think you're seeing it right now, okay? Let's downgrade the no voice, okay? It's an aberration. People were racist. Next thing we'll be having a sorry day for the loss of the referendum, okay, right? Now, I was in Canberra last week, Canberra land I call it, a bit like Santa land, and I went to ANU, beautiful 4-storey building, air conditioned, only found 2 offices open, and I was at a little conference and we got talking over morning tea about the referendum. And I said to this other lecturer, what do you think? He said, oh, well, Scott, you know, it's explainable. I said, well, what's explainable? He said, it's all those uneducated people. I see. I said, well, I'm sorry, Will, but I voted no. He said, you didn't. I said, I did. Shocking. And he said, oh, well, look, it's those poorer socioeconomic people. They don't understand. I said, well, I said, look, I happen to know a lot of people who aren't necessarily poor or socioeconomic, and anyway, so what if they are? They've still got a right to have a viewpoint. So then at the meeting, I dared to raise the issue. The voice came up, and someone said that they were surprised how high the no vote was in Canberra. You know, it was 40% or something, you know. And they were a bit shocked that there could be so many people in Canberra who voted no. Now, but we did get agreement from someone at the meeting who said, I said there are some legitimate reasons to vote no. Now, this did not go down very well at the meeting, but I did get some support from someone. And I said, I'm willing to engage in the argument if you want to have an argument. So that's one thing, we've got to fight that all the time. Secondly, I think there will be some attempt to establish a new Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander commission or body like we had once before that got closed down because it's corrupt and so on. So I imagine there'll be something being set up to look for that space. Thirdly, we'll continue to politicise our public service. Our public services, unlike in Kevin's time, or my time, have become increasingly politicised with yes people and cronies who do the bidding of the government. That's why we keep making mistakes, by the way. That's why things keep producing things that are not very effective. So I think this is another way. So we'll politicise key bodies with people who will do the right thing in that sense, okay? There'll be hectoring across institutions. So some institutions who don't want to play ball will get pilloried a bit and so on. You also see there's a report come out. Believe it or not, there's a crazy idea. They want to increase the size have more politicians. Now, I think this is a crazy idea, okay? I love politicians, but we've got enough of them. Thank you very much. Now, just think in Queensland, there are 3 state politicians to every federal member of the House of Representatives. Think about it. State Parliament sits 40 days a year. Great job if you can get it. Now there's a proposal to increase the number of senators to 14 around the states, 14 for Tasmania, 14 for Queensland. Also to increase the number of senators in the territories from 2 to 4. Now this will mean that you'll create more possibilities for Greens to get elected and so on, things like that. So very danger. So be careful of those events. So this referendum has really important implications to politics. It will determine how the non-Labor side of politics want to run with this. Do they want to run with the tour, take the initiative of it, or do they want to just lie back and let the other mob, as usual, set the agenda? That's the problem, okay, what's been going on. So, let me just finish up. Was it a victory for the silent majority? It sure was, and that's the way it should be. It's all right, I wrote an article saying it's all right for Liberals to say no, all right? It's all right to say you don't agree with something, because that's the basis of democracy. That's the basis of why we have a vote, why we have a referendum. And if we don't have that right and we get belittled for it, we're finished. And I just want to put up a couple of things you should read. One's book here called The Political Brain. It's the book, if you want to read about campaigning, it's the book you should read, okay? You can buy it. There's a great book here from Connor Court about Divided Australia, which is over there for sale. It's a really good book about the fragmentation, the thing that Kevin talked about. We're fragmenting our society rather than bringing our society together. And there's another book by Lindsay Tanner, who's a former Labor politician, said politics has just become a form of entertainment. Okay, it's just a form of entertainment. We're full of stunts, politicians doing stunts. I think the Olympic Games is one of those big stunts. So on that point, I'm going to finish and we open up for Q&A.